Jaime Hjelm is a custom automotive expert and shop boss in the Netflix reality series TexMex Motors. She is also co-owner with her sister of Wicked Wrench, a car shop just outside Chicago. Jaime is a highly accomplished professional in a heavily male-dominated industry who knows car restoration is an art, and she approaches it that way. Check out Season 2 of TexMex Motors to watch how she designs a 52 Chevy after her purse. As shop boss, Jaime directs but also cares deeply for core cast members, including larger-than-life Rabbit, the man with a voice like honey on gravel. Here's my conversation with Jaime. Thank you for taking time to speak with me today, Jaime. And I think what's interesting is that you might have done podcasts in the past that were car related, and I've never done an interview with somebody who was a car person. So it's a great opportunity to bring two worlds together.
Yes, it is. And cars are definitely a form of art and creativity, depending on what you do with the vehicle. But I think those two worlds definitely collide. And I'm really happy to be on this podcast because, again, it's not in the car world or the car industry. So I'm pretty happy to be here to do this.
Cool. That's cool. I mean, there's no doubt when I watched the work that you and your team did, at least what I've seen, was incredibly creative. Because you're working out of a framework. You're working with cars that are older cars, and you get to decide what to make of them, and that's an amazing opportunity.
It is, and it's hard. Filming and doing a show like that is by far the hardest work of my life because you have these deadlines that you have to meet. You have a lot of different people and a lot of different personalities that you're literally living with for 5 months straight, 7 days a week. So it can be challenging with the different personalities and then the scope of work that we have to do along with it.
I think I didn't realize that at the beginning. So if you're based in Chicago, that means you go down to El Paso for the filming season, so you're there full time for 5 months.
Correct. So season one, I think I flew home 2 or 3 times, and it was just over a weekend period because my kids were graduating high school. I had to do that. One of them went off to the army. I had to deal with that. But season one was a much harder season. I think we were there about 6 months. But yeah, season two, I stayed there the entire 5 months, did not come home once. We had to see it through. On the show, we build 12 vehicles. So when you're doing 12 vehicles in 5 months and the scope of work that we're doing to them, sometimes we're working 16-hour days, 7 days a week.
And how about working with a team of people, which is, different from, do you work on your own in your garage? Like, did you work alone or with a team also?
No. So in my garage, my automotive repair shop up here in the Chicago suburbs, my sister and I actually own it together. It's female ran and owned. We let our brother work with us.
That's cute.
Actually, my sister-in-law works too. We have 7 technicians and we do about 30 cars a day. So we have a very high volume shop. It has its different challenges every day. You're not dealing with the same thing over and over because we're dealing with all different types of cars. But 8 o'clock in the morning, I start. I'm at a mad dash the whole day to the finish line at 5 o'clock because there's so many vehicles coming in and trying to diagnose, trying to fix them correctly, finding parts, which is always a puzzle. I am definitely that fly by the seat of your pants type of girl where I'm very flexible. I'm very patient. And I just kind of got to roll with the punches with what I have to deal with. And I think that in turn works well when I am in El Paso filming with these cars because I run the shop here in the Chicagoland area. And then on season 2, I was given the task to be the shop boss too, which I have done pretty much my whole life, running shops and having males under me. So sometimes that can cause a problem.
So let's go into that by starting with
Mhm.
just how you came to work with cars.
I am my father's daughter. That's what happened. He was a body and frame man and he knew mechanics, and he always worked out of his garage at night after working in automotive repair dealers or wherever he worked. I found it more fun to hang out with my father learning automotive, and he had no problem teaching it. Everything I've learned is pretty much from men, either my father, my brother, another friend of mine. I've been mentored by some really great guys, and the proof today of what I can execute and do, I thank them for that. But that's how I got into it. My dad taught me how to paint a car when I was just 13 years old. So that was like my biggest accomplishment in my teenage years. When I was 17, I learned how to build transmissions off of a book because that was, I don't know, 94, 95. So there was no YouTube or anything like that. I mean, you would have to buy a book and learn how to do it, and that's what I did. My father started a very large taxi company in the suburbs of Chicago in the 80s. So he always believed that we should have our own fleet maintenance garage, which we did, and we handled all the maintenance on the taxi. So I was a fleet mechanic for 20 years. So I mean, to me, that is extreme. Those are like the most extreme examples of working on cars in an environment like that. So my sister and I actually decided to put that business down on Father's Day this past June in 24, and we just run our general automotive repair shop.
So we talked about sort of working with cars as your profession, and then
Mhm.
I did see that you have restored the Chief. I wanted to just know a little bit about the Chief.
Yeah, so that my dad, he was a talker. He could talk to anybody at a gas station, restaurant, and he met this gentleman, and the guy took him to his garage, which was a storage facility pretty much. I mean, it was pretty big. He had all these classic cars in there. They were beautiful. And I was 17, 18 at the time, and I fell in love with this car. And my dad brought it home for me one day and said, "Here you go." I'm like, "Wow, okay, thank you." And I actually drove that car to college. It was more reliable than my brand new Chevy at the time. That was in the dealership, constantly getting recalls and warranty work on a constant. So my 62 Pontiac was more reliable, and I drove that more than anything. And I couldn't get that car to shine. The paint was so dead on it. Everything was original. So I told my dad, I said, "Listen, why don't we just paint this car and make it nice since I love driving it?" Well, my dad was kind of extreme. He just took the whole car apart and we pretty much made it a show car. It actually has been restored 3 times. It had like a soft restoration around 97 where we did the body and the interior. And then we did an extreme restoration in 99 where the body came off the frame, different touches in the interior, engine swap. It was a lowrider too, actually, back then. Hydraulics, beautiful wheels and tires. I had a lot of sponsors. I would go to shows all around the country with World of Wheels, one of the bigger shows, and some lowrider magazine shows, which are very popular on the West Coast. Back in the late 90s, it was really an upset because there weren't many women at all, maybe like a female partner with her husband or something like that showing a car, but this was a car that I worked on, that I built with my father. I have trophies taller than myself for that car, so but then the third restoration I did between 22 and 24, which I wanted to make it a street driver. The car sat on the back burner for many years because I had twin boys. I didn't want to put that kind of money into it when you're bringing up kids. So they finally grew up, and I'm like, oh, now I can put extra time and money into this car. And I pretty much, when I'm not filming, I would work on the car every single weekend in my shop alone. If I needed help, I would call either my brother-in-law or my brother for things that are a two-person job, but the car fought me every step of the way because I'm the type of person where I love classic cars. They're great, but I like what's called a restomod. A restomod is an original car with new guts. So like it'll have a newer engine, newer wiring harness, maybe a different transmission, different rear end, disc brakes. So it has better components in it, more for the reliability of the car. Car culture's really weird about it. A lot of people like the cars that are original, and a lot of people like the rest mod. So it's kind of split in two.
That's such a different experience. I'm going to very quickly share that when I was old enough to know better in my early 20s, I had a friend who loved Volkswagen cars, all kinds of Volkswagen cars. He had a Carmen Ghia, which I was in love with.
Mm-hmm.
But he said, well, we'll find you something. So we went together at one point and he said, I found you a Volkswagen thing. And they only made them the 2 years, right? So I had a 1974 yellow Volkswagen thing, but it didn't run. And he said, no problem, I'll help you. We parked it in my dad's garage and it was there for a year and a half. I didn't know the first thing. I got a book, but unlike
Mm-hmm.
you, I kind of looked at the book and I looked at the car. I'm like, I ended up selling it a year and a half later for the same amount of money I paid for it.
Oh,
It's just ridiculous. I did not have your not natural, but you learn from your dad, but you must have a lot of natural facility for not just for hands-on stuff, but for translating something from a book to real practical life hands-on stuff is a very particular skill that not a lot of people have.
yeah, I agree. It's just hard. A lot of people are very visual, so going through a book can be difficult. I really didn't have a choice at the time because my dad was like, "Well, if you learn how to build these transmissions, you would save the family this X amount of money a year." I think it was more about always trying to make my dad proud. I don't think he ever wanted me to really be in the automotive industry at the level or degree that I am, but he finally got over that years ago. So,
Well, you've done pretty well at it. You must be very proud.
yeah, yeah, actually, yeah, he was. He passed in 18, right before we opened our automotive repair shop, but that was a dream of his, is for us, my sister and I, to do that. So he knew it happened, and we got a picture of him up on the wall, and we say hi to him every day.
Nice. Nice. Good for you. You delivered on a dream for both of you.
Yep.
What is it that you do love most about working with cars?
The challenge, I think. What's great today is there's more resources if you don't know something. Of course, that's where vulnerability will come up, is when you're sitting here and you're like, goodness, I've never seen this car before. I'm talking about a classic car. I don't know all the inner workings of it. The steering is nothing I've ever seen before. Like when you start dealing with cars from the 40s and the 50s and seeing things that were over engineered or not engineered enough, and looking at the technology back then and kind of chuckling to yourself, now you understand why things are the way they are today.
Where does the artistry come in for you? Because we don't have to have a whole conversation about like what's a craft and what's art, but
Hmm.
I feel like for you well, you said it's an art. And so what makes working with cars an art form for you?
So with the TexMex Motor show that I'm on Netflix, because we have a team of people that work on the cars together, we would have meetings and talk about, okay, we want this car to look more original. We want this car to be this. When we get them, we have our group meetings about them, about our expectations and what's going to sell the car and what our budget is. I mean, budget is everything in the world. Everybody knows that. You can only do as much as what your budget gives you. The one car that I designed 100% on the show and nobody else had any word in it was the 52 Chevy coupe car. And I designed it after one of my purses because I feel that the male eye and the female eye are completely different when it comes to planning and vision, seeing things. So I knew exactly how I wanted the car, and the high metal flake in the paint and the glittery interior just made it so eye-catching, and just the little touches on the vehicle. That's where the art comes in, is where you get something or you have something that you use as an example to make a statement piece. It could be a pair of shoes, it could be pillow. I mean, it could be anything, something that gives you the direction. You'd have to see the show to see how beautiful this car is. And you know what? After I watched that episode, I was like, man, the beauty of that car doesn't even show up on camera, how beautiful that car is. So I I like making cars that are like, wow. I don't like the subdued flat paint job, stuff like that. I want cars to look like almost like a piece of jewelry. It's so beautiful. It's one of a kind, and nobody's gonna ever have a car like that again because using the different materials and textures and different glitters and paints and the type of parts we use inside of it puts it on a different level. I mean, the car is very personal to me. You put your heart and soul, and I can't tell you how many hours I search for parts and fabrics for the interiors and stuff like that just to make the car right. So to me, that's what makes it an art.
There's the well, from a lay person's perspective, right? For me, there would be restoring a car because there's the original 1950, I don't know, Studebaker or something, and then here's a picture of what it used to look like, off the lot, and then I'm just gonna make it look like that and maybe run like do a resto mod, so under it runs like a new car, but physically it looks exactly like it used to look. And what you do is take something and have a unique vision for a one of a kind piece
Yeah.
that it's sculpture. It's like automotive sculpture, but it's also an experience because somebody can drive the car and actually
Oh,
drive. Like, I can't even imagine what that would feel like to rebuild a car in your image of like your vision of what you can see and actually be able to physically drive it. That's
it is the best feeling in the world having an accomplishment like that and being able to drive it and just be like, this is something that I made, I did. Of course, we had a team putting everything together, but just the design factor of it. And I'm biased, but that's my favorite car out of the whole season. But as far as women in the automotive industry, there are a lot more today than there were 20 years ago. Is it happening fast enough? Probably not. Even with the Netflix series, I even had issues with somebody there because they didn't like a female running the shop. And I'm just like, you got to get over it. I do this for a living. I have for decades. And, my dad is from that generation where you're not supposed to cry. They don't really hug you that much. They don't tell you they love you that much. They don't tell you they're proud of you that much. He was born in the 40s. But I will say, before he passed, he did tell me, "You're a great mechanic. You're better than any man I've ever seen." He only said that to me once. But that alone keeps pushing me further and further. I mean, you have to be very disciplined in this industry. There's so much learning you have to do.
so looking ahead, what would be the most exciting project for you to work on?
I actually have another project car that I'm about to start here in a few weeks. So, and of course, it's going to be a Restomod, and it's going to have my crazy vision where it's going to probably be really out there. So I don't think I'll ever stop building cars one at a time by myself. The other thing that I really, really want to do is for the females in this industry is like I wanted to start a workwear purse line for blue collared women because I feel like we're not represented well enough. I feel like we have these big corporations like Carhartt and Dickies and stuff like that. And I still don't feel like the women's work wear is proper. I don't think it fits right still.
The only thing I have to say about that is everybody walks around with a Carhartt toque. And I'm like, just random people who are not actually doing any work are doing that. So I think Carhartt
Yeah.
has become some kind of like fashion brand. It's not actually a real brand.
Right, right. I mean, I get their work pants and I'm like, man, these don't fit the way they should, And I feel like we need a blue collar workwear brand made by women. So I think I might dive into something like that, maybe on the side.
And I would be one of the fake wannabes who would want to wear it. I mean, like, I'd find something to do. I'd be like, not to cheapen the brand, like so not to cheapen your brand, but I'd be like, that's so authentic and cool. I would want to do that.
Yeah, yard work, wash the car. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do with something like that.
Just stuff that moves with you, that you can get dirty, that doesn't rip easy, that you can
Oh
dirty
yeah.
clean easy, like all that kind of stuff.
Mm.
100%. It's not what women's fashion, for the most part, is intended for. Still, when I first approached you about talking with me, is there anything else that kind of sprung to mind, especially when you saw like vulnerability in life and art, and you're like, what? Why is she? Who is that person?
Owning your authenticity and putting yourself out there and, stepping in uncharted territory like I feel like I've been doing for 25 years. I think all of that amounts to a certain type of vulnerability, especially like going out on TV for people to watch you and scrutinize you because the car culture, they're a funny bunch. They'll just watch the shows just to see what we're doing wrong on them. you know. So,
Nitpick at you, like,
yeah. To be honest, I almost want to say I think that TexMex Motors, the show that I'm on, is probably the first show that had a female head shop boss with men under her ever.
the only other series I know is Gotham Garage, and there's a woman who's part of the team, but she doesn't come anywhere near leading the team, that's for sure. And when I'm a little obsessed, I love the car restoration shows and car restoration. This the whole concept of it, I think, is really cool.
Yeah.
When you became the boss in the shop in season 2, I was kind of like, oh, all right, Jamie. Like, yeah,
Hmm.
great. That's not so common. And so I'm not surprised that there might have been some people who are like, ooh, how did that happen from season 1 to season 2? I thought it was super cool role model though, for sure.
I think one of the factors is too, though, it might be hard to believe for some people. Our first season, 55% of the viewers were women. Who knew? So they said, it makes sense. Is this what you do every day at work? I think it all worked out well. Us, I call us the core four: Scooter, Rabbit, myself, and Wes. We're the heart of the show from season 1 to season 2. And if you've seen the show, you know that there's a heartbreaking
Yeah.
thing going on there, which was it was it happened right in the beginning when we first got there too, where one of our cast members got sick. And being a mom, maybe that's what it is. I'm the one who said 3 days after being there that Rabbit, there was something wrong with him. And I'm the one who actually took him to the hospital and found all this stuff out. So he did not want to go home and begin any type of cancer treatment or anything like that. And he wanted to film it and see it completely through because this was his life dream 100%. That was his choice. And that's what he did. He wanted to see it through. And let me tell you, he really fought hard during filming towards the end there just to make everything work and end up okay for the show. So, you know,
Was That was one of the things because, as a viewer, when you don't know the people who are involved, but you do know they're real people. So it's different from watching another kind of a show. So, they're real live people. Watching season 2, the first couple episodes, fine. But then you start to see his decline. So I started looking up what was happening because I guess by the time the show is released, things have already happened. So it was actually really difficult to watch the rest of the season. I almost stopped because it was almost like having this view into somebody's real life that you don't know, and it looked so personal and so painful that he really put himself out on the line to be filmed in the last months of his life. Like, he did it for the whole team. Like, I can't even, it's actually quite a beautiful thing that he did.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And I've never would have thought in a million years that something like that would have happened. I mean, he was just 45 years old, you know. He was larger than life. He's got a huge YouTube channel that, you know, anytime I miss him, I can go and listen to him talk. So it was very hard for us four, especially that's known him for so many years, that, you know, not only the filming, the cars, the challenges, and then that on top of it. It just was, it was very, very difficult. But I mean, we got it finished and it came out. I get asked a lot of questions about that.
I wasn't going to I wasn't going to bring it up because I that's very personal. So I wouldn't.
Oh no, you know, I feel like Rabbit, did you see the YouTube video he actually made?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. The goodbye video?
I did.
Yeah. So his wife had sent it to me, and I was in the grocery store when she sent it to me, and I just started crying because he told me he was going to film something or make a YouTube video, but I didn't realize that he was going to put it out 2 hours before he passed, you know? So it was, he had a lot of style, I'll say that, the way he did things.
That, and I can't
So
remember where I read it, but and I'm not gonna say it right, but his voice was something like honey on gravel or so. It is.
that's what,
I was like, that is perfect.
yep, yep, that's what they said. And I cried at the end of the show because you know, it's funny, our show, what you see is what you get. Like, I am myself on the show. Wes is himself. Scooter is like that in real life.
That's not even possible. I can't believe
It is. It is. I tell
the
people all the time, I
actor.
don't know how his wife deals with him. You know? And him and Rabbit really, the first season, they were really at each other's throats. Let me tell you. Rabbit didn't have like Scooter made him very mad. By the second season, he came around. And when I heard that at the end, when he said to Scooter that he loved him, I just started bawling because they had that love-hate relationship in real life, which, you know, I don't think that people understand. And again, that goes back to the whole vulnerability thing, and where, you know, we have so much on the line. We have so many hours and projects and so much sweat, blood, and tears, and then the personal sides. I mean, to be honest, there's a better show on the other side of the camera than there is on the camera.
You can find out more about Jamie on her website, jamiehjelm.com, and on Instagram at Jamie_Helm.